We just made it to New York, and we came out to New York for one reason only. For one reason. Oh, what you doing out here?
This is what I do. This is what I do.
So we came all the way to Harlem from Chicago just to get some pointers from the cleanest shoe, the cleanest.
Right. So these are like Chucks, original Chuck Taylor All Stars. These are the shoes that I grew up playing in. So when I buy a pair, I make sure that I take care of them. So I'm going to show you the process. So whenever I clean a pair of Chucks, I always put in a new pair of shoelaces.
Every time?
Every time.
So
I always get new shoelaces. And so this is by one of my brands, Brand Dream. We're going to rock the Brand Dream blacks in these.
Okay.
But before we put the shoelaces in, this is the process that gets them clean. First of all, we take these, and these go in the garbage.
They're trash.
They go in the garbage.
We're not gonna leave that there, but we go.
Take fresh water, and we spray the shoe. Spray the shoe on the outside. Make sure that it gets nice and saturated. This is actually a two-step process, but you're going to see the first and most important process right here. So we're going to spray it down. Make sure you get the tongue, because you don't see how yellow it is in there on the tongue. So we make sure we get all that done. Make sure it's nice and saturated with water. And then we take a sweet smelling, and I like herb mint, that green,
Oh yeah.
So you take that, and this is a very important step right here. We pour it on my brush, on the brush. So
you recommend like the harder bristles.
Yeah, you got to
get in there.
You got to get deep down inside.
Yeah, I got you.
So what we do with this is we rub it on, and we build up a lather. Not a real heavy lather, but we rub it in and we scrub out that dirt.
Yeah.
We get it in there, get it into the fabric, throw a little bit of that on, a little bit more on, get the other side.
So you don't use any like crazy like shoe specific soap?
Nah. This, what I'm using, this soap right here is designed, is regular hand soap, but it's designed for dirty hands. So I want you to see how we get the lather, how you get the lather going on in there, and you actually get deep inside. Put a little bit on both sides. Make sure you get it into the fabric. You want to make sure you do the tongue as well. All right.
Yeah, that's the part people forget. You take the
tongue. You got to get the tongue. You got to get the tongue right. The shoelaces eventually, when you put them in, they'll cover up. They'll cover up the tongue, but you still want to get it.
Yeah.
Now, one last piece that people forget about sometimes is we got to get the outside of the shoe as well, the rubber. Because you don't want to have clean shoes and then the rubber is kind of dingy and dirty and stuff like that.
Oh yeah.
And these are retro. So you kind of have an antique color, and not pure white.
It's like a little eggshell.
Yeah. So you go all the way around. You get the rubber part. You get that clean. And then the most important process for me, and it depends on where you live and the time of year, I let these sit outside, and the perfect place for them to sit, and I usually let it sit out here for about an hour. I'll let it sit and let the sun hit it, and then I'll come back up and then I'll rinse all the soap out and let them sit, you know, for another hour or two until the canvas dries.
Okay.
Because these shoes are made out of, you know, canvas.
Yeah.
So, you know,
Oh,
it
yeah,
takes them a
yeah.
little bit, it takes them a
It's
little while to
canvas.
dry. But we'll let them sit out here, and the nice sun will get it. And I try to do this year round. And, you know, when I'm ready to rock them later on today, they'll be all white.
Okay. Yeah, so you hear that, y'all? You know, you don't have to
Buy 'em.
succumb. You know, and you don't have to succumb to wearing dirty Air Force
Nope,
Ones and
nope,
Chucks.
nope, nope, nope,
I'm
nope.
about to get mine right too. These
Yeah,
are long overdue.
yeah, get them right, get them right. So that's still a little step.
So we came all the way out to Harlem.
Beautiful
So
Harlem.
you is what you telling us is that the laces only get one wear.
Get one wear.
Wow.
One wear. Because, you know, because of these the metal grommets that are located right here, when they rub against the metal, what happens is they get dirty.
Mm.
So, and you can't get this stuff out.
That's over with.
You know, you can't get that out. And unless you get, when you lace your shoes up, unless you get it exactly where this is at, and that becomes tedious. So,
Yeah.
you just throw them. They're just shoelaces.
Yeah.
Or you can recycle.
Yeah.
You know, depending on what.
All right, so we're gonna run the process one for the right one.
Yeah.
Get it
Gotta
saturated.
get it
Get it.
saturated. Gotta get it all on. You see that stain right there? That is a coffee stain. But I am determined to get that stain out. We gotta, and we may have to do some direct pour on that, because, you know, I have this thing for coffee. So what we'll do is we'll pour this liquid right on that. We'll rub it in. We'll rub it in, and if it doesn't come out with dishwashing, and it's starting to come out a little bit now, because
Yeah.
you know, it was a lot darker.
You
So
keep
we'll
on.
rub that.
You keep on poking at it a little bit.
Yeah, we'll rub that. We'll rub that soap in there, because we got to get that out. Because when this shoe dries, you know, you'll be able to see that coffee stain. And, you know, it could be, you know, people look at it, it could be anything. It could be anything. It could be coffee, it could be blood, you know.
Yeah, you don't want to get questioned by the police.
So get you a bottle, a spray bottle, and just put fresh water in it.
Yeah, because at first I thought this was window cleaner, but you just put the
it's
water.
not window cleaner. No, we use regular hand soap, and we get down and dirty with it. And you know, the thing about it is, it's not about just having to spend money for shoes that we're trying to eliminate, but you know, when you get a good pair of shoes, and this has a lot of meaning to me. I grew up wearing Chucks, so it's one of those things where, you know, we have to really, you know, take care of our possessions. You know, and then, you know, it's a good look.
Yeah.
You know, when you go out and people see you, you know, the most important parts of your wardrobe are going to be what you have on your feet and what you wear on your head. And for those of you who wear hats, you understand what I'm talking about.
Oh yeah.
So those are the two things that people look at. What you have in between, your shirt, your pants, it don't matter.
Yeah.
Your hat is straight.
You could just white tee it up.
Yeah, that's right.
Tech
you can go
pants.
White tee, you can go distressed jeans. You can do all that. But if you got on the right pair of kicks and a hat, you're in. You'll get conversations.
Yeah, I was always curious about this step, and I know people always really struggle with, you know, they think they need the specific brand spray, the Chulada or the.
You don't need that. You don't need that. One of the things that I do want to share is that I do have some leather sneakers. You know, like, you know, some Air Force Ones and, you know, some Jordans that, you know, kind of get roughed up. I'll give them a similar process.
Mm.
I won't saturate it with water because it's leather.
Yeah.
But I'll take light soap and I'll rub soap on it. So you can almost see this shoe is getting a little bit cleaner, even as we just put on the initial scrub. You know, of course, you know, we're gonna let it sit out here and kind of marinate in the sun. And then we'll soak them down with water a little bit later on today, and you know they'll be crispy and ready to wear. You know, by Saturday.
Okay.
Which is tomorrow. This is
Yeah.
Friday.
So this is like a 24-hour process.
Yeah, it's a 24-hour process. Of course, you got to have other shoes.
Yeah.
You can see how. Look at there. That little coffee stain is almost gone, and we haven't even rinsed it out yet.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you know, if you got some shoes and they fit right, and you know they had some potential, you know, just scrub them down and make them look good. So when you go out and you hit the bricks, you know, your drip will be correct.
Yes, sir.
Across the board.
Yes, sir.
Okay?
Wow.
Chuck Taylors.
Look at the difference. We're going to have to do a before and after.
Yeah.
Cool. Cool. That's what we come to Harlem for, baby.
Right.
Shoe care. All right. Well, before we log out, you got any shout outs, anything you want to promote?
No, well, you know, we have events happening here in New York all the time. You know, that's what I do. I want to shout out to my peeps in Chicago, North Side, South Side, West Side, all of that, Hyde Park. Tell everybody what's up.
Okay.
If you come to New York, give me a holler. Sure, there be something that we can get into.
Oh, yeah. You heard it here first. Ladies and gentlemen, the CEO, you know, getting y'all right out here. You know, I see a lot of biscuits out here, you know. So I saw his process. I'm like, I gotta let y'all get in. Free game.
Right.
Look at the view, y'all. All right, we at Rebecca's tonight, y'all. Peace.